Today we are tackling the old Runald and Kjaro's bands versus Singularity band debate. The Runald and Kjaro's bands are two very similar green items, some of the best in the entire game that are unlocked by the Death Do Us Part challenge. As for what they do, the Runald's band once picked up, for any hit that deals more than 400% damage, it will trigger a runic ice blast that will slow the enemy down by 80% for 3 seconds, plus an additional 3 seconds per stack, and also deal 250% total damage, plus 250% per stack. The Kjaro's band works almost exactly the same. However, for hits that deal more than 400% damage, it instead blasts enemies with a runic flame tornado, which deals 300% total damage over time, plus an additional 300% per stack. For both of these items, after activation, there will be a 10-second cooldown period before they can be activated again, and this is marked by this little icon in the bottom left-hand corner. On the other hand, we have the Singularity band, the void variant of these two items, and it's kind of unique in the fact that it will corrupt both the Runald's and the Kjaro's band. So for example, if you have one of each of the fire and ice bands and then stumble across a Singularity band and decide to pick it up, you will have a total of 3 Singularity bands, as the Runald and Kjaro's will each get corrupted. As for what it does, it works very similarly to the previous two items, and hits that deal more than 400% damage will also fire a black hole that draws enemies within 15 meters into its center. This black hole then lasts 5 seconds before collapsing, dealing 100% total damage plus an additional 100% per stack to the enemies caught within. Differing, though, from Runald and Kjaro's bands, the cooldown for the Singularity band is 20 seconds, and again is indicated by this little cooldown icon in the bottom left-hand corner. So, now that we know a little bit about each of these items, which one is better? And the answer is the Runald and Kjaro's bands, hands down. Although the Singularity band's black hole effect is pretty nice, it's unfortunately just pretty bad in comparison to the other two. And as a general rule of thumb, if you're playing solo dolo, you pretty much never want to pick up Singularity band. Not only does it do less overall damage by a pretty significant margin, but also the cooldown is twice as long, which is just absolutely bonkers. This, combined with the ultimate fact that you can keep both Runald's and Kjaro's bands and stack them separately, just means that the Singularity band, although a good item in a vacuum, is just straight up garbaccio in comparison to these two. Pretty much the only redeeming quality about this is that it can damage multiple enemies and is good for crowd control, but the fact of the matter is, its effect can basically be completely replicated by just picking up a primordial cube and combining that with the Kjaro's band flame tornado for basically the same thing but way more damage. In fact, it takes a 3 stack of the Singularity band just to reach the power of 1 Kjaro's. I ain't gonna lie, I'm dogging on the Singularity band pretty hard, but I will say it has another additional benefit, and that is that it can freeze Mithrix in his tracks during the final boss fight, which is pretty damn useful. Despite these two benefits though, in general, if you already have Runald or Kjaro's band, or even better, both, then you should avoid picking up the Singularity band and corrupting at all costs. It really just is a downgrade in every definition of the word. As always, there is an exception to the rule, and the exception here is in multiplayer. If you're playing multiplayer, then it's fine to pick it up, and just make sure one person only picks up the Singularity bands and the other person picks up the Runald and Kjaro's ones if they come up. Problem solved. Also, remember that one is always better than none. So if you are about to fight Mithrix and you have a Singularity band sitting around ripe for the taking and don't currently have Runald or Kjaros, then pick that bad Larry up. All right, now for some rapid fire knowledge. Numero uno, the survivors who synergize best with the bands are those that specialize in single target high damage attacks. So characters like Railgunner, Loader, Double Rebar Multi, and Bandito. Numero dos, the Royal Capacitor, already being probably the best equipment item in the game, gets absolutely busted when you combine it with the bands. So if you have bands, be looking for this guy pronto. Numero tres, if you can't find the capacitor, then the blast shower is a close second, since the blast shower actually can reset the cooldown for the bands. So if you have this combined with some fuel cells, you can reset that cooldown pretty often and bump up those damage numbers. And lastly, numero cuatro is the shurikens are a great item for activating the bands, as some characters have difficulty reaching that 400% damage mark to trigger them, and the shurikens can fill that gap. Looking at you, Commando. Anyways, that's pretty much it. Thanks for tuning on in, and we'll catch you next time. Adios, amigos.